Welcome to the Empowering Children and Young People e-learning video. This workshop has been designed for safeguarding teams and parish leaders that are looking to explore and understand the importance of empowering children and young people. This is an important element of the safeguarding framework as identified by the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse, and is often an area that many individuals and organisations struggle to comprehend and implement. We hope that by the end of this video, you walk away with a greater understanding of the concept of child empowerment and child participation, as well as having some useful tools and knowledge to implement this at your parish. As we begin the workshop today, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land wherever it is that you are present today. In acknowledging the traditional owners of the land, the Professional Standards Unit would like to pay our respects to their elders and leaders, past, present and emerging. We also acknowledge the pain and harm caused to the victims and survivors of child abuse in the Catholic Church. The Professional Standards Unit dedicates its ongoing work to all survivors and victims of abuse. Survivors and victims of abuse have often said they tell their stories so that other children do not have to suffer what they had to suffer. In fact, we have learned enormously from the stories of the survivors and victims of abuse. During the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Abuse, survivors and victims of abuse were given the opportunity to share a message with the Australian community about their experience and hopes for creating a safer future for children. One survivor wrote, "It is my hope that by the abused children of my generation telling their stories to the Royal Commission, their suffering and their courage will ensure that this abuse will never happen to another Australian child." As we work through the content in today's session, there will be times that we reference the voices of those who have experienced abuse. If today's training brings up some issues for you, we encourage you to reach out, seek help, and speak to the people around you, whether it be family, friends, support services, or other trusted persons in your life. Let's begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father, as we come together today, we ask that you walk with us and the children on this journey towards ensuring our parishes, your church, are safe for all. We ask you to guide us and strengthen our will to protect children spiritually, emotionally, physically and mentally. May the children and young people that we are here to protect grow to be empowered members of their communities and parishes. Amen. Let's take a look at the content that we will be covering in today's e-learning video. Today we will begin by looking at children's rights and responsibilities, as well as the legislative context that directs our policies and practices around safeguarding. This will then lead into an exploration on the topic of empowering children and young people. As we will discuss further on in the video, the Royal Commission and recent studies have taught us that when children are engaged, valued, informed, and participating in organisations, this contributes positively to their sense of safety, their awareness of child safety, and is a contributing factor to preventing abuse from occurring. We will also be using practical examples from within a parish to demonstrate what child participation and engagement can look like, and we will provide you with some useful tools and resources to potentially use within your own parishes. Throughout the video, we will also conduct an analysis of a parish group that involves children, and will also look at how to document your parish's progress within this parish child safety assessment tool. By working through each of these topics, we hope that you will be able to make connections between the concepts of child safety, participation, empowerment, opportunities and obligations. We hope that you are challenged along the way to not only reflect upon how your parish views children and the value placed on them, but also for yourself as well. So let's begin. Understanding and acknowledging that children and young people have rights is an important part of being a child-safe organisation. When we refer to children's rights and responsibilities, these are universal, irrespective of a child's age, gender, race, ability, cultural background, etc. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, to which Australia ratified in December 1990, is one document that upholds universal rights for all children, irrespective of their ability, race, gender, or cultural background. The rights described in the Convention document extend across civil, political, economic, social, health, and cultural rights of children. We will explore this document now with a short video.
Every minute of every day, 245 children are born around the world. That's 2.5 million children a week and 128 million children a year. Every one of those children is born full of potential. But they won't get there without everyone's help. From the start, a baby needs to be loved, cared for, and protected from neglect. A baby needs to be protected from illness and disease. A baby needs to be clothed and fed a healthy diet so she can grow strong. As a child grows, he needs to feel safe to explore. That means a safe place to live and play. Safe drinking water, healthy food, clothes, and someone to catch him when he falls so he can reach his milestones and get help when he doesn't. As a child grows, she needs a chance to learn, free from discrimination. A child needs to be encouraged to ask questions, to develop their curiosity and unleash their imaginations, and time to play, for sports, for leisure activities, and for cultural traditions. As a child matures, he needs a chance to spread his wings. That means the freedom to express himself, and the freedom from exploitation in all forms. That also means access to information, and opportunities to gain experience that will help them give back as adults. Will you help a child in your life reach their dreams? You have more power than you think to nurture, protect, inspire, and teach, and to help a child reach their full potential. Visit www.unicef.org to find out more about the Convention on the Rights of the Child and how you can help.
Some examples of children's rights at the heart of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child are for children to be safe and feel safe, for children to be heard and believed, for children to be supported and to be protected from harm and abuse, for each child to be accepted and valued. Just as children have rights, they also have responsibilities that come with these rights. For example, if a child has the right to be safe, feel safe, and be free from harm, then they also have the responsibility to not engage in bullying or be harmful to others, causing them to feel unsafe. Similarly, if a child has the right to be accepted and supported, then the responsibility that comes with this is to ensure that they care for others and accept and support them too. If a child has the right to express their views freely in all matters affecting them, then the responsibility with this would be to respect others' views as well. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child has also been converted into child-friendly versions, and these are readily available for public use. These may be a great addition to your parish's existing portfolio of resources that could be used in activities for groups working directly with children, or could be used more broadly within the parish, capturing a wider pool of children and young people by being displayed on parish notice boards, etc. When children and young people are respected, listened to, and valued within an organisational context, the benefits for children and young people include a sense of ownership, greater confidence, and an increased sense of belonging and connectedness as they have been able to express themselves and have their needs, concerns, and opinions heard. Organisations that involve children and young people in decision making also benefit by creating an organisational ethos that communicates the value of children and young people. In doing so, a culture of trust is built through this openness and transparency. Organisations also benefit by providing programs, services and activities that better meet the needs of children and young people. History tells us that abuse is more likely to occur in organisations that do not value, respect or listen to children and young people. This has been clear through the Victorian Betrayal of Trust inquiry and the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse. We know now that if children are not valued, included or respected in the organisations that they engage with, there is a greater likelihood that they will be mistreated and that abuse will remain undetected because children and young people do not feel empowered to tell. In addition to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, there are also other legislative frameworks that guide and inform the Safeguarding Children and Young People framework of the Catholic Archdiocese of Melbourne. We will explore these frameworks now in order to ascertain their significance for empowering children and young people. In 2014, as part of their inquiry, the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse commissioned Australian Catholic University to undertake research into this field. They conducted a range of research activities, including focus groups with children aged 4 to 18 years of age. That report is called Taking Us Seriously and is available on the Royal Commission's website. The premise of this research was that children understand and experience safety in different ways than adults, and when we do not have an understanding into how children understand, experience and feel safe, then this is a major impediment to providing a child's safe environment. These research findings can help us to understand how children perceive and experience safety within organisational institutions. The significance of these findings has been reflected in National Principle 2, children and young people are informed about their rights, participate in decisions affecting them, and are taken seriously. It is also noted in the National Catholic Safeguarding Standards in Standard 2. Children are safe, informed and participate. Furthermore, in the Victorian Child Safe Standards, this has also been an established standard labelled Strategies to Promote the Participation and Empowerment of Children. Let's take a look at these standards a bit closer now. When we refer to the child safety frameworks, we are describing three main frameworks. They are the Victorian Child Safe Standards and Reportable Conduct Scheme, the National Principles for Child Safe Organisations, and the National Catholic Safeguarding Standards. The Victorian Child Safe Standards were introduced in 2015 and are a legal requirement for all organisations working with children and young people in Victoria. The standards highlight the need for organisations to take preventive steps to ensure that children and young people are safe. They require organisations to embed their commitment to child safety within their organisation culture, policies, procedures and practices, and to prioritise the safety of children and young people. There are 7 child safe standards, and Standard 7 in particular focuses on what strategies the organisation has in place to promote the participation and empowerment of young people. As many of you may be aware, in 2017 the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse reached its end after 5 years of inquiry. The National Principles for Child Safe Organisations reflect the 10 child safe standards that were recommended by the Royal Commission in their final report. In 2016, the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference established Catholic Professional Standards Limited, or CPSL, in response to the recommendations emerging from the Royal Commission. CPSL created the National Catholic Safeguarding Standards based on the national principles, which are designed to drive cultural and behavioural change across all Catholic entities, ministries and organisations across Australia. These standards are designed to promote accountability and transparency of Catholic Church leaders and their ministries and entities. The 10 National Catholic Safeguarding Standards are aligned with the 10 National Principles for Child Safe Organisations and contain specific guidance for Catholic entities, ministries and organisations. Standard 2 is designed to promote the safety of children by focusing on how parishes across Australia ensure that children are safe, informed and participate in the decisions affecting them. I'd like to share with you now a short video from Catholic Professional Standards Limited. This video contains a brief interview with Robert Fitzgerald, who was one of the commissioners appointed with the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse. This particular video addresses the need for parishes to begin the conversation of child safety with children and their families.
So you know that a lot of people became, there was almost an exhaustion with the degree of this discussion. And I can imagine quite a few people sitting in parishes saying, oh, do we have to have a public conversation about this? I've had enough.
Sure. Well, I understand that. What we understand is that in relation to matters of abuse, including family and domestic violence, it's once it's opened up, it's once the conversation is engaged in by the community that we start to make a change. But what we know even more in child abuse is the children that were abused didn't even understand whether what was happening to them was abuse. They hadn't the words, they didn't have the concepts. For many in the most conservative faith-based organisations, they had no conception about what was happening to them because they were denied normal and proper access to sex education and training. When they raised these matters with their families or other people, they were in total denial. And even today in some of the most conservative faiths around Australia, some of the closed religions and some of the more ethnically based religions, that abuse is being treated the same way. That is, you go home and you tell the family if you've got the words, and the family says to you, don't say anything to anybody else. This will bring shame on the family. It will bring shame on the church. It will bring shame on the community. And by the way, he couldn't possibly do it because he's a great man. Now that's exactly what happened to the Irish Catholics of 30 or 40 years ago. What's changed in the Catholic Church more generally is we're starting to have the conversation. In these other institutions, that conversation has not yet started. And so part of the Royal Commission's work was we ran a number of multicultural forums. And the reason was simply to start the conversation. So it's
sort of deep-seated conversations about sex, isn't it, really?
It is. And recently I was talking to independent schools about this. And I said to them that the highest risks in their schools are some of the most deeply conservative, faith-based schools. Because unless you have the conversation about sex, unless you have the conversation about abuse more generally, unless you start that conversation with parents and children, the only person that suffers from that is the child. In the past we said, don't tell anybody because you're going to hurt the family, the church, the community. But you have to suffer. We said you, of all the people, you've got to hold it back, not tell anybody. Go through your whole life pretending it never happened. Not the adults, not the institutions. We cannot let that happen again.
A really strong message from this clip in relation to organisations being brave and taking steps to have conversations with children and their families about sex education, safe and unsafe feelings, and abuse in general. As part of the Taking Us Seriously research report undertaken during the Royal Commission inquiry, 121 children participated in this project. Through focus groups, conversations and activities, the voices of children were heard. Coming out of this research, a greater understanding about children and young people's concerns and views around child safety was formed. The Catholic Archdiocese of Melbourne acknowledges that by informing children of their rights, educating them, and increasing their awareness around child safety, involving them in decision making and forming trusting, safe relationships within the parish, collectively this will contribute to the prevention of organisational abuse. Protective factors such as these play a vital role in the cultural shift for child safety. As we now understand the value of participation of children and young people, we now move on to the concept of empowerment. Within the Victorian Child Safe Standards, there are 3 principles listed by the Commission for Children and Young People that underpin the participation of children and young people. The first is empowerment. Second is purposeful engagement. And inclusiveness. We as Australians are fortunate to live in one of the most multicultural countries on earth. Recent research estimates that Australians speak more than 200 languages and more than 1 in 4 Australians were born overseas. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, waves of immigration and the accessibility of international travel has resulted in a highly diverse population. However, cultural inclusion is just one aspect of overall inclusion and diversity. When a parish is truly inclusive, then they would acknowledge differences of race, gender, ability, and cultural background to create safe spaces for all children and young people. In addition to inclusiveness, another principle listed by the Commission for Children and Young People that underpins the participation of children and young people is empowerment. Empowerment is defined as children and young people having a greater control or say over their lives through participation. Empowerment can also refer to a person's ability to not only have control over their life, but to have the power to enact change. It can refer to a greater sense of confidence and strength, as well as an increase in someone's capacity and the ability to make choices. When we empower children and young people, we as adults actively listen to them and respond appropriately. According to children, in matters relating to safeguarding, adults need to put kids first a little more. In speaking to children and hearing their concerns and opinions, our parishes need to make things better, not worse. Children have also described how disempowering it can be when their opinions are asked for, but nothing is done with them. This sense of false security and mistrust can damage programs, services and groups within our parishes. In speaking to children about their concerns, opinions, and providing them with education around safeguarding, some adults may be wary of this and the conversations that ensue. However, as one child states, it's good that kids are aware rather than being scared. Raising awareness is good. Just as it is important for children to be aware of and informed of their rights and how to seek help if required, children also feel that it is important that the adults in parishes need to know what procedures they have to follow to do the right thing. And lastly, the children want to be heard. If you're going to make the world safe, you've got to make them feel okay. You have to ask them what worries them and fix that. Let's explore that now. The Taking Us Seriously research commissioned by the Royal Commission also found that the way in which children and young people viewed their safety differs to adults. Children experience safety in their bodies and with their feelings. Children feel safe when they are relaxed, happy, and not stressed. Children's understanding of feeling safe includes when they are with people they trust who will protect them, when they know what's going on, when they are aware of what adults are doing to keep them safe. Children also feel safe when they are able to have a say and when their concerns and opinions are taken seriously. Children also feel safe when they know what to do to protect themselves. Children can tell if they are feeling safe by checking how they are feeling, that is, tuning in to their body's responses such as increased heart rate, queasiness in their tummies, wobbly knees, etc. Looking to see how others are behaving. Listening to what children and other people are saying. Remembering what they have heard from parents, friends, the news, etc. And asking people they trusted if they are safe. The research project Taking Us Seriously, commissioned by the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse, also found that institutions often fell short in promoting the empowerment of children and young people. As described by the Commission for Children and Young People, often well-intentioned people implement policies and procedures aimed at protecting children, but often children are not aware that they exist. As a parish, it is important that we reflect on this and remedy it. This could occur, for example, in having a child-friendly explanation of the Safeguarding Children and Young People policy, or having a child-friendly version of the Parish's Code of Conduct, so that children and young people know how they might be expected to be treated. As mentioned earlier on, purposeful engagement is one of the 3 principles listed by the Commission for Children and Young People that underpin the participation of children and young people. Purposeful engagement is defined as encompassing children and young people taking on valued roles, addressing issues that are relevant to them, and influencing real outcomes. This could include, for example, involving children in decision-making with adults to choose or revise activities and programs, or it could include children providing feedback, either in a formal way through surveys or informally through conversations. When we look at ways to enable children and young people to participate in a parish, a useful tool to refer to is Shear's model of pathways to participation. In this model, each level of participation is ranked from level 1, children are listened to level 5, children share power and responsibilities for decision making. There are also 3 stages of commitment listed at the top of the diagram that relate to each level. These stages of commitment are called openings, opportunities, and obligations. An opening refers to a parish's willingness to participate, whereas opportunities describe the stage of commitment where children and young people require support in some form to participate. This could be through clearly defined procedures and processes. The last stage of commitment, as described by Shear, was obligations, and as we've touched on at the beginning of this video, obligations refer to the policies and legislative requirements that are in place within parishes that enable children and young people to participate. Let's have a look at each of the levels of participation a little bit further, with a practical example for each of these levels. Level 1. Children are listened to. In this level, the organisation's team is ready to listen to children and arranges work so that they can do this. Policy documents state that children will be listened to. However, there is no intentional, organised effort made by the organisation to seek input from children. Children's views are listened to only when and if they are volunteered by the child. Organisations operating at this level hold a belief that children are not interested in voicing their opinion or views. For example, a child approaches a safeguarding committee member with a concern, or a child attending the children's liturgy program voluntarily provides verbal feedback to the leader about their enjoyment in a particular activity. Level 2. Children are supported in expressing their views. In this level, the overarching commitment by the organisation is to elicit children's views and to support children in expressing them. In doing so, there is a positive commitment from the organisation to recognise reasons why children may not express their opinions. The organisation works to enable child participation by overcoming some of these barriers. For example, language barriers, lack of confidence, etc. An example of this level may be a children's liturgy group leader who checks in at the start of the group and at the conclusion with the children and asks for their feedback and input in relation to what they have enjoyed and what they would like to discuss next time. Questions posed to the children are modified to suit each individual child's age and comprehension level, and the leader uses a mixture of visual activities and written activities to gain feedback, such as emoji icons to rate satisfaction, or questions such as, what was your favourite part of the session? What worked well? What didn't work well? Level 3. Children's views are taken into account. In this level, children express themselves freely and their views are taken into account in decision making by the organisation. Children's views, opinions and suggestions are one of several factors that influence policy decisions of the organisation. For example, children in the youth group are consulted by the leaders about potential activities that they would like to see occur throughout the year or locations for outings, etc. Once these views have been collated, the leaders determine the final program for the year. Another example could be a representative from the Safeguarding Committee frequently attending the various groups run through the parish that directly involve children. Whilst attending these groups, the Safeguarding Committee member gathers informal and formal feedback from the children, which they use later on to inform decision making within the various parish committees. What's interesting to note in this model is that after level 3 and before level 4, this point is the minimum you must achieve if you endorse the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. The lower levels in this model see children participating by providing their views to aid the decision-making process, whereas these upper levels of the model see children as participating where decisions are actually made. When we look at level 4, children are involved in decision-making processes. This involves children moving from simply being consulted to being active participants in decision-making. Here, children and leaders work together to jointly create documents such as policy documents, programs, etc. Within the organisation, there is also a change into how they involve children. This could include making changes to procedures, paperwork, jargon, and how the parish operates in order to make the organisation more child-friendly. For example, A parish that has an altar server program may involve the group of altar servers to create and design a child-friendly code of conduct around appropriate interaction with adults and other children. This code of conduct would be distributed to all of the altar servers and their families. It may even be prominently displayed in their vesting area. Every 6 months, the parish may seek feedback from the altar servers, which is submitted anonymously. The leaders of the altar server program and safeguarding committee members review this feedback and inform the parish pastoral council for improvements and modifications. Another example of level 4 within a parish context could be demonstrated by children attending a catechist program being asked during the first session together to create and develop some group rules. This is worked on collaboratively with the leaders, and children's voices and suggestions are recorded. The leaders then display these group-created expectations each time the program runs. It is also communicated to the families of the children attending. Finally, we reach level 5 of SHARE's Pathways to Participation model. Children share power and responsibilities for decision making. In this level, the degree of participation that the children have is increased. Children have real power over decisions that are made. Adults commit to share their power and to give some of it away. At a parish level, this could be demonstrated where young people are present and represented on the safeguarding committee and have clear procedures in place to communicate to other children and young people what will happen with the feedback received. As we've discussed, there are different levels of child participation. How a parish enables this to occur and how it is implemented will depend on the context, their capacity, and commitment to do so. Some variables to child participation may include the child's age and stage of development. Where some examples of participation will be more suited to older children due to their maturity and cognitive function, younger children's involvement is still valuable but may look different. Similarly, the level and extent of consultation will vary based on the level of interaction and duration of involvement of children. For example, a youth group that meets every week for a few hours has more contact time with their cohort of children as opposed to a children's liturgy group that meets for 20 minutes every Sunday. Keeping this in mind, let's think about how parishes can plan for children and young people's engagement and participation. Parishes can support children and young people by informing them about their rights. For example, a parish might provide child-appropriate documentation about the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child to children and young people. Or perhaps the parish's policies and documentation, such as the Code of Conduct, are also available in child-friendly versions. Another example of this could be looking at the parish's induction programs for children and young people. During their induction, is child safety and its importance talked about? Is it clearly communicated to children and young people who they can go to and speak with when they have a concern? Informing children and providing them with the knowledge, skills and awareness of what to do in unsafe situations is an essential protective factor. Parishes can support children's safety by engaging them in consultation about issues that impact them. For example, youth leaders may work with children jointly to plan the youth group program for the next term. Collaborating with children through informal discussions or formal questions, surveys and feedback forms allows the children to express their ideas, opinions and concerns. It also allows the parish to tailor programs to meet their needs. By creating formal structures and processes that provide an opportunity for children and young people to participate and have a say within their parish, adds to the sense of empowerment. Involving children in event planning, having a young person as a representative on the Parish Pastoral Council, or conducting surveys with all children and young people engaged in activities or events are other examples of how parishes can support children's safety and increase their participation. Further examples of ways that children can be engaged in conversations about safeguarding may include, but are not limited to, body mapping. This activity encourages children and young people to identify the difference between being safe and feeling safe by using a body map to represent thoughts and feelings. It encourages children to tune in to their body's responses to feelings of being safe and unsafe. Templates can be used, or children could trace their own body outlines to complete. A feelings thermometer, or worryometer, is a visual tool that could be used to assist young children in identifying and labelling their feelings of safe and unsafe in different situations and with different people. It is also a great tool for children to tune into their current state of emotion and leads into discussion with the child about their problem, concern, or worry. Other activities to discuss feelings of safe and unsafe with children could include safe and unsafe maps. This is where concepts of feeling safe and unsafe are brainstormed. Working through this open-ended activity, children can explore their own understandings of being safe and being unsafe, and the times, places, people, and things they considered to be safe or unsafe. Using the activity of warning signs further assists younger children, again, to identify and label their feelings of safe and unsafe in different situations and with different people. A worry matrix can be used with older children. This can be used to brainstorm issues or concerns that children might be worried about. After listing these down, the children then decide how likely it is that they would encounter such a risk or threat, and if they were to encounter this risk or threat, how bad the consequences would be. Using a simple visual graph, listing the likelihood of the concern occurring and then the potential impact that this would have, children then plot their concerns on the matrix. The Helping Hand tool has been used by many organisations, and its premise is for children to identify at least 5 people with whom they feel safe. This support network of people can be changed over time and is useful for children to determine who they trust, feel comfortable with, and would be happy to speak to when they feel unsafe. As your parish begins to move forward and plan for children's participation, you also need to remain mindful of things that can be implemented to support children to keep themselves and others safe. Parishes can do this by prioritising for children's safety and genuinely being a child-safe organisation. Parishes could clearly define concepts of appropriate and inappropriate behaviours, and this would be monitored by adults and leaders across the parish. Parishes can also support children and their safety by paying attention when concerns are raised. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, 1 in 3 adults in Australia would not believe a child if they disclosed they were being abused. Yet 98% of child sexual assault cases reported by children are found to be true. As we work with children in our groups and activities, we develop relationships with them and can become increasingly aware of when their behaviour may change. We may be able to observe and notice if the child is okay or not, and make ourselves available to listen to them and talk through and address any issues they may have. Support for children's safety can also be shown by taking children's concerns and worries seriously, rather than waiting for evidence or accusing them. Asking children what they are thinking or feeling, as well as informing children about dangers and what's being done to protect them. Another way parishes can support children's safety is to ensure that our messages are not ambiguous and that we aren't sending out mixed messages. For example, saying we value your opinion, but then not engaging in feedback, or saying that your body is your own and you can choose what happens to it, but then not addressing misconduct. We will now work through a gap analysis of a children's group that may occur at a parish. In a parish context, a gap analysis can be described as the process of comparing the state or performance levels of a group, activity, event, ministry, or even the parish as a whole organisation to a desired state or level of performance. It involves working through the following steps. What we have. What do we currently have in place? What do we want? In other words, what would be the desired level of engagement and participation of children and young people? What is the gap? That is, considering and questioning what is preventing us from moving from point A to point B. And the last question in this process is, what are some remedies for this? How can we achieve this? What are some solutions to bridging the gap? For this example, we have chosen to use a children's choir as our subject group. Using the children's choir as our example, we break down what practices for empowering children and young people may be in place at the example parish. We will look at what the desired level of engagement and participation of children and young people may be, and we will assess if there is anything potentially preventing the parish from achieving this. We will then brainstorm some possible remedies and solutions to this example. In this example, this particular parish already has a few things in place for engaging children and promoting their participation. Here we can see that at the start of the year, the children are invited to create their own code of conduct. This is in line with the parish's existing code of conduct for children and young people. Copies of this document created by the children in the choir is then distributed and shared with the children individually and displayed in the area where the choir meet. The parish as well already have in place a consultative process. When they are planning and preparing the music for masses and special liturgies, the choir leaders ensure that they are asking the children for their ideas and noting these down. When decisions are made about which songs will end up being used for the services, the children are informed of this and explained why these choices were made. The next step in the gap analysis is now to consider what is the desired level of participation that the parish wants for children and young people in the choir group. Here the parish has noted down what they want and are aiming for is for all children to have the opportunity to be involved in a choir. They also are wanting new and current choir members to be aware of their rights and reporting processes if they felt unsafe. After reflection, the choir leaders also felt that it was important to have more feedback from the children into the songs that were chosen and the structure of the choir rehearsal sessions. Now that we have considered what is already in place for the choir, and we have considered what the parish is aiming for in terms of the desired level of participation from children, we can now identify the gap between the two. Here the choir leaders have identified the things that they need to work on, otherwise known as the gap. They have listed here that there is a gap around exploring ways to recruit new choir members and strengthening the induction process for newly recruited choir members. And they have also identified a gap in relation to exploring alternative ways of gathering feedback from children. The last step in the gap analysis is where the parish will consider potential solutions and remedies that will help them to achieve their goal and close the gaps identified. For this particular parish, they have decided that remedies could include promoting the choir and recruiting for new choir members in the parish bulletin and within the parish school's newsletter. Currently, the children's choir leaders invite the group to create their own version of the Code of Conduct. As an extension of this, a remedy has been listed as involving the children in the representation of this. For example, in their own handwriting, not typed, or with drawings from the children displayed too. Another remedy listed was for the induction process for choir members to include distributing to the children and their families a copy of the parish's safeguarding policy. The idea of even creating a child-friendly version of this document has also been suggested too. The final remedy listed by the parish is for feedback forms distributed to the children to be adapted to suit their developmental level. This could include visual images for younger children or children with English as an additional language to express their level of satisfaction. Now that we have analysed a children's group within a parish, we will now move on to working through the parish self-assessment tool. In order to assist parishes in fulfilling their compliance requirements to the safeguarding frameworks, a parish child safety self-assessment tool is available from the Professional Standards Unit to help parishes. This self-assessment tool works through each of the 10 standards, 49 criteria and 111 indicators of the National Catholic Safeguarding Standards. A few of the criteria and indicators are relevant to seminary, pastoral supervision, etc., and we have taken them out. But otherwise, parishes need to really think about how they meet the criteria and the evidence they have to show how they meet the indicators. As you go through the Child Safety Self-Assessment tool, you will see what your parish has to have in place to meet the National Catholic Safeguarding Standards. Obviously, different parishes will have more or less in place. For each indicator, you will need to write down what you have in place and what evidence you have of this. You may also need to write down what more you may need to do. If you need to do more, then you need to write down who has responsibility for it and what the time frame is. Otherwise, realistically, it probably won't happen. The self-assessment tool will help you to prepare for an audit, but most importantly, it will help you to assess how child safe your parish is and then to take action to become fully child safe. We will now explore this document with an example for Standard 2. Children are safe, informed and participate. You will see here we have the criteria listed as criteria 2.1. Children and young people are informed about their rights, including safety, information and participation. The Victorian Child Safe Standard it relates to is referenced underneath, and in the column next to it, the indicators for this criteria are listed. In this example, the parish has assessed themselves on the Compliance Assessment Rating Scale at a level of not addressed. As such, the next column, which would generally see filled with examples of evidence, is left blank, as the parish has not commenced or addressed this indicator. In the What More Do We Need to Do column, there are a lot more notes listed here, as the parish has already identified that this was one area that required commencement and improvement. Here there are a range of tasks listed, such as creating and providing feedback forms for children and young people that is accessible to them. Tasks relating to how this information will be communicated to the children and young people also features as a task for completion. And then, of course, is the allocation of these tasks to specific people with timeframes noted. Let's take another example for Standard 2. You will see here we have listed the criteria as criteria 2.3. Where relevant to the setting and context, children and families may be offered access to abuse prevention programs and related information that is age appropriate. The Victorian Child Safe Standard it relates to is referenced underneath, and in the column next to it, the indicators for this criteria are listed. In this example, the parish has assessed themselves on the Compliance Assessment Rating Scale at a level of initial ad hoc. In the next column, we can see here examples or evidence of what the parish is currently doing or has in place. For this example, they have listed that they currently have on display posters from Child Support Services informing children of programs and support that is available to them. The parish also forwards communication from organisations that they may receive to parishioners that is relevant to linking with other support services and agencies. In the What More Do We Need to Do column, the notes listed here show that the parish has identified what they will put into place to move forward. Here there are a few tasks listed, such as the parish priest meeting with the leaders of the groups that have direct contact with children. In meeting with the leaders, the parish aims to discuss how the concept of protective behaviours is addressed with children to keep them safe. Another task identified by the parish was to host a workshop conducted by an external child protection organisation. Further tasks relating to creating or accessing child-friendly information sheets about support services available to children and their families also features as a task for completion. And then, of course, in the final column, these tasks have been allocated to specific people with timeframes noted. As this self-assessment tool is a living document, it can be added to and modified as the parish achieves a task or decides that another task needs to occur. As we draw to a close, let's pause to reflect on what we have explored today. Throughout the video, we have explored children's rights and responsibilities, and we have explained the legislative and regulatory context that supports the empowerment and participation of children and young people. We have also focused on why empowerment and participation of children are a key element in preventing abuse. We have considered how to involve children and have them participate in parishes. And we have looked at resources and tools to assist parishes to empower children and young people. We have walked through a gap analysis of a program within a parish that has direct contact with children, and we have also highlighted examples of evidence for the National Catholic Safeguarding Standard 2 within the parish and entity self-assessment tool. That brings us to the end of our e-learning video today. We would like to take this opportunity to remind you that the Professional Standards Unit is here to help you. Myself and my colleagues are here to provide general advice and support to parishes via phone, email or direct visits. We can provide direct support to your safeguarding committees. We can also assist and guide parishes with self-assessments and preparations for audits. We are also available to assist and guide you with managing reports and allegations. We also have our own section on the CAM website dedicated to safeguarding children and young people. On this website, you will be able to find a range of resources and information to assist you with implementing the frameworks. Please know that at any time, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact the Professional Standards Unit. On behalf of our team, I thank you for your time in watching this e-learning video today. We hope that this has been helpful for you. Thank you and goodbye.